Hello, hello, it's Brian once again from Tavarin Games with another update on Dungeon Maker. So I've been working to add more items to the map makers, giving the DMs more things that they can place to really fine-tune their maps, and that's something I'm going to continue working on forever with this thing. Can never have too many items to place. I've also been adding some quality of life improvements and the ability to create and add NPCs to the game. So let's just dive in. So first thing you'll probably notice is next to these campaign buttons, we have two new icons. So this little X at the top and this little pencil with a typing cursor. So if you press the X button, it would let you delete the campaign or anything you want. The maps, the characters, the enemies. So we'll cancel that though, we don't want to delete that. And then this icon is the renaming icon. So the original name will pop up and you can rename it. So we could confirm that and it will immediately rename it. And same thing for any other files. So that will let you edit them in the game without having to go to your application data folder and find the original files and rename them there. Now one thing, if you rename enemies and NPCs that have been placed on the map, you're then going to have to go to those maps and replace those enemies and NPCs because they're placed by name in the map data. So if you change their name, the map data won't have record of them anymore. So that's one downside to the way I've done it, but otherwise though it's working pretty well. So let's actually dive into one of these guys. Let's go to the campaign map first. So you see one thing I've added are these labels. So those are under the utilities. So we can grab a label, you can pop it down and it will just say name. You can put them anywhere you want. Now, without anything selected, if you then click on the label, the same menu as for the notes pops up. That's why it still says save note. I'm using the exact same one, but we can call this something else. We can add a name. Once we save that name, it will show up as the label right there. So that's something that's good for you to be able to name all the different locations on your map so the players can discuss them and talk about them correctly. So everyone will be able to see those labels. Even though it is a utility and the other ones are only visible to the DM, you can see them here. So I think that's nice. All right, we'll save and exit. And now let's dive into the actual map editor where I have been adding a bunch of stuff. So let's start at the top. If we go to the walls, I've added in a couple new types. So this sandstone wall and this more natural, what I call the cave wall, which you could use for caves or cliffs. It's got these more curved corners and a bit more of a natural shape. So we could try to make a little cave that's got some interesting shape to it. And you could like build up a cave system for your players to explore. If we go into the floors, I've added a few. So we've got the matching sandstone floor, it's just a recolored stone brick. As well as actual sand, this nice little repeating dune pattern. So you could build out a desert type map or a beach type thing using the sands, because I've also added in water. And the water itself animates to give it a little wave pattern. Now, in the map editor, if you place another sheet of water, they start animating as soon as they're placed. So on the map editor, they might be animating out of sync. When you actually load into the game, though, they're all loaded on the same frame when players are on there. So the animation will be synced for all the players in the game. And if we go back into the map, like save the map and come back into it, they'll be properly synced. We can also add in this sort of rough stone, like gravel floor for a little bit more natural look. One other thing, if you remember from the last video when I was sort of showing the different things you can place, when I was using the eraser to remove these walls, the walls that it was next to weren't updating their sprites. They weren't triggering to update. They only triggered to update when you use the walls to remove each other. But now, if we use the eraser, they do in fact update. So that's just another little quality of life thing for people making maps. On the door side, I've added in these stone doors. Let's zoom in so you can see it, which is a more rougher sort of stone-looking door. Whereas if we look at the wooden door, you can clearly see the difference. And then also the sandstone doors, which are this sort of brighter sandstone color. So a couple nice things to place. Furniture-wise, I've been adding a few things. So we have throne. I talked about not having anything to decorate the prison, so I've added in these prison beds, which look really gross. But they would. It's a medieval prison. And then a few more. So we've got some barrels, a chest, these campfires for this campfire, which actually animates. I think it looks nice. I've just kept it simple, low frame rate. Like, this is designed to sort of look old school and sort of, again, evoke the tabletop, the pen and paper and hand-drawn maps. And I've also got this other type of fire, which I've used, say, in a kitchen to be a fire pit or a fireplace you would use for cooking. These tents, bookshelves. Oop, clicked in the wrong spot. Actually put some bookshelves in here. And the bookshelves will actually block, because these are meant to be larger bookshelves, they will block movement and light. So yeah, we've got those. And actually put those back to show you that in a bit. Decoration-wise, I've added a few things. So we've got these buckets and cauldrons and daggers and these food platters. Admittedly, I think I made the food platters look a little too realistic. I just took pictures of meat and vegetables and placed them on a cutting board and resized them. So yeah, they look a little realistic, or a little too realistic, and don't really match the style. I'm just trying to really get a lot of different items in the game quickly so we can get this to people to start using. If people are actually interested in start buying this program, I will probably hire an artist to go through and draw a more uniform art style for the whole game. For now, I'm just trying to add in several items a day, so I'm just quickly grabbing pictures or 3D models online that are not copyrighted and then editing them, screenshotting them, whatever, to get them into the game quickly. But yeah, I've been adding a bunch. So we've got these paintings you can place on the walls. We zoom in, I've got a couple there, a couple portraits, this landscape. You know, we can add in, replace those landscapes with these battle scenes instead. A couple shelves, so like this bottle shelf, bookshelf, a bear shelf, shelf with a sword on it, you can see there. And this weapon rack, you could say use in an armory. It's a whole bunch of different weapons. I still have to make some more weapon racks and armor racks and tons of other things. But I've been making progress in getting items for people to place. As well, we've got a bunch of natural objects, so a bunch of different trees. The trees themselves at the trunks will block movement and light. But then there's these smaller versions, which are the same sprite, but they're smaller, which are meant to be little bushes or smaller saplings you can place down. Those will not block light or movement. People can see over them and move through them. And then same thing with these boulders and rocks. So I've got these big boulders. They'll block movement. They block light. They're meant to be like these 15-foot tall boulders that will stop a player in its tracks and people can hide behind and use as cover. And then these smaller versions of rocks, which are just meant to be smaller rocks that the players can step over or stand on and can see over. So they won't block movement or light. And yeah, so that's my additions to the map so far. So we've got lots of different things that we can add. So let's exit to the menu. And then another thing you'll notice, or I talked about, is the NPCs menu. So the NPCs are pretty much like the editing and addition is pretty much the same as the enemies, and they actually do use the same scripts. The purpose with NPCs, we have this different colored border to let players know, like, this is a friendly person. So they have these silver borders instead of the dark borders. But the DM still, of course, needs to be able to control them. If your player group decides to go murder hoboing around town, the DM will want to be able to take control and perform attacks or try to run away with the NPCs, or they just might have to move them. So it has the same thing as the enemies. You put in stats, you give them actions. This guy's actually just got, these are the default stats. It's just zeros, 14 AC, 30 speed, 12 HP is just the base default stat for a standard human. So any NPCs you create that aren't going to be good fighters in that, the barkeeps, the maids, whatever you're adding in, they'll just have you can just save them with these default stats and maybe give them just a club action. You know, a 1d6 with a 2 and a 0 as the very basic action that a standard human could perform. And then all of your NPCs can have that. Not going to be very good at fighting, but you can also add in NPCs that are certainly more powerful. Like I made this guy, this King Torbrin, who's got higher AC, better stats, better HP, better weapon. So that way the DM can take control of the NPCs, as I said, when the players go a murder hoboing. The other difference is the NPCs only come in the medium size, which you can use for small and if you want. Because they're just meant to be the standard races, the standard humanoids that you'd find around a town. So medium is generally the size they would be. If you have large, NPC, you want to make a giant NPC, you can make them as an enemy, which the players generally walking upon a giant would probably see as an enemy themselves. But then you can have them talk to the player and diffuse the situation. All right, so let's go back. Another little quality of life improvement, if I go to the enemies list, before when you create a new file, an enemy, a map, character, whatever, that alphabetically went to below this list, you wouldn't really see anything. The list would just stay wherever it was. So I wanted to make it so that the list will scroll when you add a new thing so that you can see that item, that character, NPC, whatever, has been added. So let's make a Yeti, because that'll definitely be at the bottom of the list. And you can see the list instantly scrolls and puts that item visible as the last item. So the Yeti's down here. We can still do our name editing, Sasquatch, which actually will cause it to move up. But let's just delete that since we're not working on it. Just to show that now when you're adding the new file, it'll show you exactly where that file ended up. So you know it's there and you can immediately just click it to start editing it. And that is true for characters and maps and that. I haven't added enough of anything else to actually require scrolling yet. But a DM with a lot of maps in their campaign is definitely going to find that tool pretty useful. Okay, so let's actually go into hosting a campaign. So let's do Wexany. And we'll jump in. So another thing I added, so the DM, when they take control of an NPC or an enemy, I've added in this little notification at the top that shows the name of whatever they're controlling, just to really let them know you are controlling this character, this enemy. Like the camera is definitely centers on them, so if I click on this guy, the camera will immediately move over, but this sort of just really drives home this is who you're controlling. And if you click on it again to deselect them, that goes away, and that lets you know, okay, you're back in free camera mode, you're not controlling someone. And again, we can take control of the NPCs, move them around, perform actions. The other thing, when the Dungeon Master was taking an action for an enemy, the message notification that was being sent out was just being sent out as Dungeon Master. Now, though, that action is going to be sent out with the NPC or the enemy name, so that everyone can see that it's this particular NPC or this particular enemy that performed that action. And we actually missed that attack. The knights tend to have quite high AC. Now the other thing, let's actually try to get a hit, because this is pretty cool. If we can get a hit, you'll see another update. Man, we are rolling badly. 10, 2, 9. Oof. There we go. So you saw a little attack animation there. And actually, I just realized I actually made the greatsword a piercing attack. It is supposed to be slashing. But what that's trying to highlight is I now have attack animations whenever anything gets hit. A little animation plays on them. And that animation is unique to the damage type. So that's accidentally piercing. So we'll try to get this guy to attack. There's one I properly put in as slashing. So you can see the different attacks have different animations. So a little slash flies across the NPC there. And I think that's just a nice little addition. And as I said, there's different ones for each type. So let's make, I don't know. Actually, let's make lightning. I really like my lightning animation. Let's have it auto hit just so that the animation will play and not do much damage. So we'll save that. And boom, you can see we have a little lightning bolt flies across them. Woo! So yeah, every single one has a different little animation. I just made those last night pretty quickly, so not all of them look very good, but they get the message across. This person was damaged, and they show you roughly what damage it is. So let's add in a fire one. Let's actually give it some text. So we have a little fire blast. I tried to keep them fairly simple, but, to the point. So yeah, I think that's a nice addition to the game. Now, let's actually keep hosting this. Let's get this one going so we can dive into the game. So let's join that as a player. And again, we'll localhost that. So we show up at the proper starting location. The DM can see us. Oop, I have currently a character selected. So we popped right into the middle there. We can jump in. Again, let's trapdoor, run around. We can see through those doors. So you can sort of see how the player would see this map. You have these bookshelves are blocking the light, and they block movement. So you could use them as cover, but you won't be able to see through them. And again, like, let's do this attack, and you can see we hit all of them, and there's little fire icons. All looks good. Now, let's have the DM, though, return us to the campaign. So, in the previous version, I was showing you, when we jumped back to the campaign map, they always ended up at the starting location of the campaign map. So let's actually hit return to campaign, though. We load, and we can see the character actually returned to the icon that was placed down. They'll end up in a little square around the icon. Again, it's got to be big enough to fit several characters. But yeah, they pop back in now, so that's a nice little quality of life thing. The players, if we go back in here, can then run around and do their thing. Let's actually exit that. Let's host the Darkest Dungeon one, because I actually placed 2 maps on this one. We'll just jump in as our character. Now, again, we don't have any labels or anything, but they move around. Oh, we enter this map. So the players then... Oop, I am controlling the DM. The players then run around the map. They do their thing. Maybe they get attacked by this guy here. We have this acid spray, so you can see the acid damage. Alright, and then we return to the campaign. So the player ends up close to that flag, the one we were in. So that player can then run around. They say they want to go here. We have an encounter there. Jump in. There, I did not actually build out a map for this, really. Oops, again, I'm always in the wrong one. Let's move the player somewhere else, just so we can prove that we've actually moved the player. Return to the campaign, and boom, we're closer to that flag. So just a little quality of life thing so that the players end up where they are, especially if you build up a really big campaign map with lots of different encounters. This way the players don't get lost. They end up where they were. Yeah, so that's pretty much the updates I have for this week. I think a lot of quality of life things, and I really hope you like what you see and that you're interested in using this application for your own Dungeon and Dragon games and your dungeon mastering. And I hope to be able to bring it to you fairly soon so people can get using this. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you'd like to support my work on these games, as well as Little Vale once I return to it, and other games hopefully I'll be working on in the future, please join my Patreon. It'll be linked in the description below. But thank you for watching.